Black Gemara. Today's daf is daf Chav Daled. We are concluding Masechta Makos, and in Mitzvah tomorrow we will begin Masechta Shavuos. So we're up to the very bottom of the page of Gimel and Beis, and this is probably it's a line of Agadata, but one of the most important lines. 4 lines from the bottom of the page. Chav Gimel on the Beis. Dorash Rav Simloi. Rav Simloi darshaned. Sheish Meyos v'shloish esrei mitzvahs nemru el Moshe. There's a total of 613 mitzvahs. Shloish Meyos v'shishim v'chamesh lavin. That 365 negative mitzvahs. You're not allowed to steal. You're not allowed to kill. Kiminyan meisachama, equal to the number of days there are in a solar year. Umasayim v'abo shmo ya asar. Then you have a 248 positive mitzvahs. I say you have 248 positive mitzvahs keneged evod of shalodim, corresponding to the limbs. So according to the Rambam, this is merely a way of remembering how many mitzvahs there are. It's a sign. But if you look here in the Rivon, or others say it's still Rashi, you look here, the Rivon says that every single aver in your body screams out, do a mitzvah. And every day of the year. If you look at the last line of Rashi. So somebody's like to say, Rashi, the Rivon says, Shebechol yom, every day. Mazhirim olav, every day the day tells you shloi laver, don't be over on this day. Exactly, do the mitzvah. In other words, it's not stam symbolic. There's a connection here between the days. In fact, one of the tainas they had against Yaakov Emden when he had the big fight with Rabbeinu Shneibeshitz, and he accused him of being a follower of Shapsi Tzvi. He said Shapsi Tzvi, one of the first things he did was he abolished Tisha B'Av, because he says, I'm back. So the gula is here. There's no more reason to be fasting. That's what he, and because we know during the second base of English, it was a Yom Tov. Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshitz was a troiber. He used to remove the fats of an animal in the butcher. So Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshitz, so Yaakov Emden accused him of the following. Every day is another loisus. What is the loisus that corresponds to Tisha B'Av? Gid Hanosha. And that's why the pasuk says, "Akain lo yochel Yisrael, Akain lo yochel Yisrael es Gid Hanosha." Es is Tisha Av. Tough Aleph is Tisha Av. So it says in the Kabbalah Svarim that Tisha B'Av corresponds to Gid Hanosha. So he accuses Yonasan Eibeshitz of being a troiber because he would make sure that he left the fat sin of the Gid Hanosha, because in his eyes it wasn't an Aver anymore, because once Tisha B'Av has been removed, so too has the Isra of Gid Hanosha been removed. So in other words, the days of the year that correspond to the mitzvahs is not just ad hoc, there's some connection. What is very interesting is that it says here 613, and there's nobody who argues in the Gemara. And the Rambam writes in the Shoshim, the Shosh edition, that this is how it is, 613 mitzvahs, and then therefore he wants to explain why the Bahag. The Bahag counts certain mitzvahs, the Rabbanon, as mitzvahs in the 613. He counts Chanukah, he counts Megillah, he counts Hallel, he counts Bikur Cholim, Nichum Avelim. He has 8 mitzvahs there in total, if I remember correctly, that he counts as mitzvahs, of this Hayag mitzvahs. And the Rambam said, what are you talking about? How can that be? He has a lot of questions on it. First of all, there's so many more mitzvahs than 8 mitzvahs. Why don't you count the Yisrodaim? Why don't you count Eidavin? And how can it be that and the Ramban, because the Ramban wrote the Ramban to defend the Bahag against the Rambam. And the Ramban, you have Megillah Esther and you have the other one, Megillah Tova, but the Ramban writes, who says that this is axiomatic, 613? Maybe there is a machlekes. In fact, I think there is a machlekes. Because remember, in the beginning of Seit, we had 3 machlekes in Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Kiva, where this is a chayiv, where this is a reshus. Lo yitama, right? By a kohen. Is that the kohen can be tama to 7 people? Is that a mitzvah or is that a reshus? No. According to one that says a mitzvah, that's part of 613. No, the one that says a reshus. And how come he says? And he goes through many Gemaras, so we find the same thing. But this person says it's a lav eating chametz. Rabbi Yehuda holds it's a lav eating chametz at a Pesach, and Rabbi Shimon says it isn't. Somebody's missing out on 630 mitzvahs. So he asks, and why doesn't the Gemara ever ask? No, according to him, how do you make up the 613 mitzvahs? So he says maybe that's not so. Maybe it's just Agadata. Maybe it's not really so factual that it's 613 mitzvahs. Interesting discussion.
I don't know, that would be like the Rambam says, it's Simona Ba'alma.
Yes, true, but Simona Ba'alma that does 613 to be able to remember how many there are. Not that we don't believe in 613. Okay, the whole Rambam's Rai is exactly 613. Can't be mitzvahs that Rabbanan are included in it. Yeah, another example brings in the machlekes, and Abaye holds that Krishma is only with Rabban. We hold Krishma is Mahatayda. Abaye Menachos and Brachos holds. In fact, Teish's paskas that Krishma is Rabban in Menachos. So if you hold like and Ahuba Divatayda, it says Vishanan V'Menacha because morning and night it's talking about Divatayda, not about Krishma. No, so according to Abaye, you're missing two mitzvahs now because we have Krishma two mitzvahs at night and day. How do you make it up? What do you put in there? And so on. Anyway. Says the Gemara. So that's what Rav Shimlai said. Comes along Amar Rav Hamnuna micro. In fact, there's a posse for it. Toida Tzivulana Moshe Marasha Toida Begemata. Moshe Ben gave us Toida the Gematria of Toida. Fred the Gemara Toida the Gematria is maybe Chatzreah. There's only 611, missing two. The first two. This is Toida Tzivulana Moshe. We heard from Moshe, but maybe we heard too. Now there's a big machlekes again between the Bahag and the Rambam and others, whether Anoichi is really the first mitzvah. From here, the Gemara clearly, Anoichi these are the two mitzvahs. But the Bahag says, how can you count Anoichi as a mitzvah? Why are you doing mitzvahs? Because you already believe in Eibishter. So what do you mean? If you're making a mitzvah, I believe in Eibishter. If I don't believe in Eibishter, then why would I do the mitzvahs? I'm already, before I even did the first mitzvah, I already believe in Eibishter.
He doesn't hold that there is such
no such mitzvah. He says, no, that's not the first dibur. Anoichi is not the first dibur. So he says it's not a mitzvah. That's what he is. He says that lo yilecha is made up of two parts. That's what the two is. Lo yilecha, you're not allowed to build avodah zarah, and nor can you bow down to avodah zarah. There's two different avodas here, and that's how you get to 10. Not anoichi. Interesting, the Rambam who holds that anoichi is from the 10 mitzvahs, but he changes it. He writes in his right. If you look at the Rambam, he says da es al kevicha. Understand David, as if to say he sort of agrees with Bahag that the believing part of it, of course, is a davar pasha. Otherwise, what are you doing? But the mitzvah is understand, learn chassidus, understand what the Eibishter is. That's what it's all about. Because what do you call it? There was once, if I ever tell you this, there was once a person who became a chassid out to that, and he left his Rosh Yeshiva, and one day the Yeshiva met him. He said, "Why? How can you leave me to go to the Alter Rebbe? The Hasidim, they believe that their Rebbe is greater than God." So the Talmud said, the Chassid said to him, "My Rebbe is far greater than your God. But my God, my Eibishter, the whole doesn't think. Because it's not just the moon of believing the Eibishter. As the Gemara said, we had in Ksuvah Hey, and we had in Medrash and Peshalach, in many places, that daily Maisa Sadiqim, Maisa Yosef this, and the Eibishter can create, they can create. If that's what labor is, how you create, you have something else to create. Okay, let's continue. But say that Yvonne's the gang here is very interesting. He says that people became shavacher. Yvonne says beginning with tzaddikim they can do all the mitzvahs, but things became tough, and so therefore Ketorah came along. He made 11 principles. Not that he took away the mitzvah, but he made 11 cardinal principles. The Chsivas on Pasig, before you go back to the Forshim ask if you learn that every Aver screams like the Yvonne learns, that means every Eid has to keep every mitzvah, but it's impossible. If you're not a king, you can't keep the mitzvah. If you're not a Kohen, you can't. If you're not a Levi, you can't. And if there's no base of Migdash, you can't. So what does it mean? Every day screams out, do this mitzvah, do that mitzvah. It's impossible. So there's two answers, generally speaking. One answer is Kol Yisrael Reiv Zeh, so the Melech does mitzvahs counts for me, but that doesn't really help us Manazeh. Because Mana said we don't have the Melech, we don't have the base of English. Many mitzvahs are missing out. Are missing. Tumah v'tara we don't have. So the other answer is so therefore, when we learn about all the different mitzvahs, it's as if we did the mitzvah. The mitzvah is to learn about every mitzvah. Anyway, Adami came down and reduced it to 11. Now, very interesting, because in the luchas it's half and half. Half in Ogla Chaveda and half in Ogla Makom. The whole debate is where does Kivlav aim fit in? Why is it Ben Ogla Makom? Should be in the half of Ben Ogla Chaveda. That's why the Chinuch learns that the whole reason of Kabbalah is to teach us to have cover for the Eibishter. If you learn that somebody who's your benefactor, you have to appreciate, certainly you appreciate Eibishter. Come along David, and the next few things we learn how they reduce the number, the mitzvahs, the cardinal principles, much more leaning towards Ben Adon LaChaveda than Ben Adon LaMakom. So it's not just limiting, it's a whole different look. Whole different folk, yeah, exactly. Let's see. See, it says a pasuk. Mishmal David Hashem mi yagabalech. He's asking a question. Who can live in the Eibishter's oilech? Miyishke b'hakachecha. Who can reside there? So he now gives 13 answers. They want to explain which one is. Hoylech Tamim is number one. Upoil Tzedek is number two. The David Embel says truth. We want to explain each one. L'Raga L'Shayne doesn't lie. Loi Asa L'Rei Ra doesn't harm anybody. The Cherper L'Nasa Kreva doesn't have any shame for his relatives. Nivze Be'ein of Nimas. Those who are Nivze, the way we learn over here. Those who are Mias and eyes, the Eibishter is Mias to him as well. Repugnant to him. Bezid Hashem Yechabed. You respect those who fear Hashem. Nishba L'Har Yamir. Right, and he will swear to harm himself, and he won't change his shvua. He'll keep his word. He won't give any interest, lend with interest. He never took the bribery. Oh, he said, "Hey, we'll leave it. Do this, we'll never disappear." Now the Gemara explains what are these 13 principles. That's a like Avram that you should be complete, whole in your ways. Okay, Poil Tzedek. What do you Poil Tzedek? Like Abba Chilki was very honest. In your kindness, we had that he was working for his balabas, and they came to raise money. He wouldn't talk. It's not my time. I'm loyal to my balabas. So Poil Tzedek is Ben Al Chabed. The David Emes Bulvavi says truth. For example, Rab Safra. What's the Rab Safra? We had Rashi brings about Basa. Interesting that if the Rivon wrote this, and he was the son-in-law of Rashi, he should have quoted Rashi in Babas. We had actually there was Rashbam there. There was Rashbam, so take it back. But the Safra was middle lane Krishna, and a guy came and he wanted to buy something from him, and he offered a price. And Safra didn't answer. Then he offered a better price, and he offered a better price, and finally, then after davening, Safra said, I already made up my mind in the beginning. I'll give it to you. And there's a machlekes, a mordechai in kedusha, and others. There's a showing whether this is like midas chassidus, so this is much more than this is like remember I had different much more. And I told you then, I tell you now, I never understood that Gemara. In the middle of Krishma, you now be maramas with your eyes. You have to now be distracted. You have to be totally focused. And Absafra is sitting there and thinking of business. And he made up his mind. It's a good deal. I'll take it. What is this? And Kumagaber, Rabba, and everything else. I don't know. I never understood this. Exactly. So he folded, but he was good.
Yeah, he was true to his word.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, his one word.
He said,
no, oh.
You can't even do that in Milk Christmas. You're not allowed to be coitus with the ainov. You're not allowed to even wink with your eyes. Yeah. The Yaakov Avinu didn't want to say a lie. That's talking about Yaakov Avinu. What's the story with Yaakov Avinu? That he said, he told his mother, "You want me to dress up like Asa? What if my father touches me?" Yet his mother forced him. The way Pashup shot is, he didn't want to go. His mother forced him. And the Rivon brings an interesting thing here. When she said, "Alai kilos chavani," I take it upon myself. Eli is actually the Abish's name, Kalim. The Abish told me this is how it should be. However, that's Chayes is the shot. Rashi tells in the Chumash that Eliezer said, "Ulai lo'isayvel l'shmeila," when he was looking for a shidduch. He said, "What happens if I can't find a shidduch?" So Rashi says he was hoping he won't find because he had a daughter and he wanted his daughter to marry Yitzchak. So Ulai doesn't mean I don't want it to happen. Ulai means I wish it does happen. Halabai, I wish it happens. So Yaakov was in a conundrum. He never lied in his life. His mother's forcing him to lie, and he didn't want to. So he said, I hope my father touches me and asks me, what's this? And I'll be able to tell him the truth. And this way I'll be mechabed my mother. I did exactly what she told me. I'll be mechabed my father. And then I won't be lying. That's what you're saying. Very nice. Anyway, the Chesiv, it says, and he'll think, what's going on? I'm deceiving him. You didn't go ahead and try to compete with your friend. You're close to your relatives. What do you mean? So there's two pshatim. Some of the Shem say Nivze be'ein of nimas means that whoever is repugnant in the eyes of Hashem is repugnant in your own eyes. Or I'm prepared to make myself repugnant in order to help out other people. Like, you remember he took his father Achaz to Russia and he tied him over there to be mice. Even though we learned that the whole Kavura it was only an hour or less between when he died and they buried him, but even that short time. And we have different shatim in the showing why. Either he did it as a kapara, so that, or he did it to teach everyone a lesson that the law, no one is above the law. Even though it was my father, he was a king, This is what he deserves. This Yidi Havayechabe is a Yeshafim El Yehuda. He Yeshafim El Yehuda was Mechabed anyone of the other Shemaim. Shebeshor Shayira Yatam Chacham. If you ever saw Tam Chacham, Haya Oymen Mekisar, he would stand up. Didn't have to hear what he share or anything else. He just saw Tam Chacham. He would stand up, Umechapkai, Umenashkai. He would go ahead and do all that. But Koidulai, and he would say to him, Avi, Rebbe. Now, why call him Rebbe if he didn't teach him a word? He just saw Tam Chacham. In fact, the other Gemara we had didn't say that. Marty, Marty. So he gave him all of this covered. The Gemara asked over there, but it said that a king has to stand firm, is not allowed to do all that thing. So the Gemara says is the chilik b'tzina or b'fehesya. B'tzina he would stand up and do all this for Tam Chacham, but b'fehesya the king is the ultimate. So yeah. So the Gemara writes. He made a shvur. He never changed his shvur. Rabbi Yochanan says he didn't want to go. He was invited to eat by the he was invited to eat by the nasi. He didn't want to go, so he said, "I made a shvur. I'm a tinius until I come home. Until I come home." In other words, he kept. He didn't change, even though he wasn't really makabel yet till later, but it didn't change. Kasper the Nosam Neshech, you never lent your money with ribis. Afilu beribis, even to a guy, because you don't want to get into the habit. We actually had about Mitzia that you're allowed that if you're not a Talmud Chacham, you're allowed to sell to a guy kedei chayav, enough to live on, but more than kedei chayav you're not allowed to. But if you're Talmud Chacham, you're allowed to lend interest. Now, what's interesting is the Rambam Paskins is a long time study on this. The Rambam Paskins that not only you're allowed to, remember you already had a machlekes, you're allowed to lend to a guy with ribis or not. Not only the halacha is a shus, it's actually a mitzvah. It's a mitzvah to lend to a guy with ribis. And the Tzemach Tzaddik has a discussion in Mishmat Torah, the Rabban, very interesting. So how do you shut the money? The Gemara clearly says that the Dover Melech, there's one of the 30 principles are not to lend to a guy's interest. So some want to say the chilik v'tamach chacham if you're not. If you're tamach chacham, lend with a guy in interest, have these day loans, whatever they call that. If you're not a tamach chacham, you have no right to do it. Only kedei chayav. And then there's a whole discussion in Achronim because they use that sometimes in halacha. What exactly does kedei chayav mean? Does it mean pas b'melech? My Masuda, the V'chai means that you can have a car, you can have, or V'chai means you can have a Lexus. What's Kedei Chayev? How do you define Kedei Chayev? That's a very open-ended, loose thing. Everyone's Kedei Chayev is differently. But others will answer Pshat Naram like this. Maybe I can't remember. Others answer like that. There's no mitzvah to lend to a guy. In Keshatal, there's a mitzvah to lend to you. There's no mitzvah to lend to a guy. But once you lend to a guy, there's a mitzvah to do it with interest. The mitzvah to do it with interest. So therefore, when it says over here, like Nosam Neshech, is not once I lend him, don't give him interest. Don't lend to a guy. Keep the money if you want to lend to a yid who needs it. It's a mitzvah. But once you lend, then the Rambam said there's a mitzvah to take it. It's mitzvah hatzal money as well. Then the Gemara continues. The case of Rabbi Shmuel, but Rabbi Yasi, where he had a sharecropper who would bring him every Friday, let's say, all the crops that he had. But once the sharecropper needed a din tater, so he brought the same produce, but instead of Friday, he brought it Thursday. And then he said, Rabbi Shmuel, I'm here because I need a din tater. And Rabbi Shmuel said to him, I can't take it anymore. I can't take it anymore because it'll be sheichet. And in fact, he didn't take it even after he became a Torah Mazmin. Because came to this possible crying. You have to be. By the way, you notice the 13 principles. The vast majority of them has been Odom L'Chavei. So it tilted. It took away from the Torah, the Luchas, which has been Odom L'Chavei 50-50, and they brought it down to mainly been Odom L'Chavei. Like Hillel said, "Ve'idat Purushu." The rest is a Pirush on Malalach Sandi. And when I asked, it sounds to me the only time that you won't be despair from this world is if you keep all 13 principles. That's amazing. How do you do that? If one of them you make Amalei Miksiv Oisit Kol Eila, that you have to do all 13, Oisa Eila, if you don't even one of them. If you're good in any of these, you're already all right. It said by Aroyas, don't be metamet to all of these. That means that it's not Osad Reis unless you do all the Vedas. What's the name? They gave a Cholelo, the Matami, even one of them, and that's enough. So more right. Boy Yeshaya came along, Yeshaya, and that Yvonne learns what was happening is the generations are getting weaker and weaker. This is amazing. There's going to be Yeshaya who first did once, then Micha came along, and then Yeshaya did it again. And the Rivan says within the lifetime of Yeshaya, there was such a Yirida Hadaitis. If you remember, Rabbi Yechon said, when I was a young boy, a young man, boys and girls came out together, everything was all right. And when he got older, things changed. I mean, within a lifetime. So we say, the Jet Age now, how things have changed so quickly. In Yeshaya, you had 3 stages. You had Yeshaya who reduced it, then Micha reduced it, we'll see in a minute, and then Yeshaya did it again. Let's see what's going on there. By Yeshaya, he brought it down to 6. He says, this is what you have to do. He says, if you want to go reach them, the Eibishter, that's number 1. The Doivim Misharim, Moy is the Batsam Ashakas. You hate those who have money from stolen money. Noya Kappa Mitmay B'Shechet. Right, is a big thing, not taking bribery. How many people were in that position to take bribery in the first place? You're talking now about the judges as part of the principles. He closes there from hearing. I'm hearing things. I don't want to see bad things. Now we're going to touch. What are these 6 things? Again, Avraham Avinu before and now that Avraham Avinu he passed it on to the generation. You don't embarrass, even if you have to be but do it b'tzina, do it politely. You don't have to go out and stechim in public. You hate money that comes from stolen things. You have a Shmuel ben Elisha. By the case of Shmuel ben Elisha, what happened was this person wanted a din tater, so he had to give truma anyway. So he went to the Shmuel ben Elisha to give him truma. The Shmuel ben Elisha says, "You're giving me truma. What about in your town? You have plenty of kainim there." So he mentioned him. I'm coming here, to din tater. So Rabbi Shmuel, not only he didn't take it in Taita, he didn't take it through after. Why not? Once you decide you're not taking it in Taita, there's no bribe. Because it's like nobody that he came to him. It's like you're stealing from your locals. Your locals are depending on it. Now remember, we had a concept called Makida Kuna. We had in the Gittin of Avlamed, or in Babasa, and Kufchavs. Makida Kuna is that this is the coin you always gave the money to. Then according to Rashi and some others, your mama shagana if another coin takes it, because Makida Kuna, as if it's already that person's. Here there's no Makida Kuna, you at random, but it's your locals. Ani icha kaidim. And therefore I feel like I'm a ganef. That's how honest he was. That's what it means. Moyes, when this money that doesn't belong to him. Noya kappa mit moy b'sheichik k'mein hashrabi. I see the story we had before from his Arish who brought a day earlier. He did not hear of one of the rabbis being humiliated with shasik and kept quiet. In other words, he would protest. Remember, Rabbi Elazar ben Shimon was buried in the attic. Nobody wanted to bury him because he used to catch all these thieves. And then one day the wife saw upstairs, and people used to go have it in Torah, and the voice came from the attic, and he would paskin after he passed away. And one day the wife came and saw a worm coming out of his ear. So he came to her in the Cholim and says, no. I once heard a Talmud Chacham being insulted, and I didn't defend him. Now we had the same story, in fact, in Rashi, same idea in Rashi. Remember Shimon ben Shotach, the two in his time, and the 2 people that were supposed to be buried. One was a Ganav, a terrible person. One was a big Talmud Chacham, big tzaddik. And then suddenly there was they thought the goyim were coming to kill them. Everybody ran away, except one Talmud stayed with the rabbi. But what happened was, all the populace thought that the other caver was the rabbi, and the caver of the rabbi was the Ganef, and therefore he really had a minion for the kvura of the tzaddik, and his Talmud couldn't believe it. Maybe he was mistaken. He had a cholim. I once heard a Talmud Chacham being upset, being humiliated, and say anything. What's different between the Rashi and the Rivan is, and the Rashi therefore tells that story, and that's the whole story of the witches and all that. The Rivan says here, and it's interesting where he got it from. The Rivan says here, why Takya was Rabbi Elazar ben Shimon punished for not? He says here, I will quote you because this is, I don't know where he gets it from. It's amazing. He says on the left-hand column, 4 lines from the top, in the middle of the line. Alma, we can see from this story, says the Rivan, Bechayav in his lifetime, have a regular doctor Bekach. Rabbi Elazar ben Shimon was very careful to make sure that no Talmud Chacham was ever humiliated or denigrated. but there's one side he wasn't. He warranted to be punished because you're so medactic. Why punk this one isn't? Where does he get this from? The Pashto Pshat is you hear a Talmud Chacham being embarrassed. That itself is bad for not standing up for Talmud Chacham. He said, no. Stam, they don't have to. It's only if you're the type of person that always does, and punk, this case he didn't, it speaks volumes as if this guy deserved that kind of humiliation. Where did you get that Pshat from? I don't know. Anyway. So anyway, right. He wouldn't look at, he wouldn't see bad. He doesn't stand by the rivers when the women would come and do the laundry. They would lift their dresses to stand and watch the women who were in Sneazik at the time. He wouldn't be there. If he was there, he would close his eyes. But it says in that he sits there above. So that's how you read. So he brought it down to 6. Micha was in that lifetime, came the Midin Ashalosh, and he reduced it to 3. If Sivat says, he give lecha Adam, he says in the passage there, he give lecha Adam matoiv, he'll tell he'll tell you what's good for you. Uma Hashem Hashem one for you. Kima says mishpos. This is what David wants. He wants mishpat, avas chesed, vatznei leches imelikacha. 3 things: mishpat, justice, again on the chavedah. Avas chesed and on the chavedah, and I say leches imelikacha. So you would think, okay, chol pochas nei leches imelikacha, but you neighborster. But look what he says right there. All 3 have been on the chavedah. What's that? Asayis mishpat zahadin. It should be justice. Avas chesed and chasadim. What's hatznei leches? The hoitzoas hameis v'achnosas kala. That what? It says in the passage when you leches, it says toiv leleches lebeis ha'edel meleches lebeis hamishna. It's better to go to a house of lebeis hamishna. Why? Because here you know the person passed away already, so you know exactly who the person was. When it goes to Mishnah, who knows what the future life is in store for you? So it's it's very apprehensive.
Serious because the case of mortality. When the base ambitious, people are frivolous.
So what does that actually mean? That's saying leches. So some of the shayim learn exactly what you said, that you have to do everything in moderation. You can't be too simcha, too much besimcha at a chasna, nor can you be too sad at a base of evil. So that's what they learn. But others say when you give tzedakah, to a kachlos kala, which is a big mitzvah, or to bury someone, then and even there, which is a chayil, is all professed and everything else, try to keep it in discreet. Chasnas in public, and these are the public things that we say, and people see that money was spent, and yet we say give it discreetly. A person can't afford never to buy food or something else, which is their own private matter. Surely be discreet. Surely be discreet. Now Shai came back. And reduced it to 2. Look at that, and the Levon says again, Boy Yishaya on the left hand side, Kol Shah Doida Shel Mata Hayim. You hear that? Every hour. Yeah, so we're no chiddush here that we think. Yeah, we say the world is so radically changing in Yeshaya's lifetime, and the Yvonne says every hour things change, perceptions change, perspectives change. So the Gemara, what are the 2 principles? Again, they all brought the Torah down to being Adam l'Chavei. I haven't seen anyone erase this, but it's such an obvious change. Forget about the number. It's the eichus as well. What should the focus be? Well, it's Darsh me and you will live. So that's one. Maybe it means look closer. He doesn't say which one. The whole Torah. For Clark, this is going back to square one. Habakkuk came and said, there's one Yisoid. Shenema v'tzadik b'munasa yichet. Tzadik lives with his amunah, and you know the famous difference between the Polish view of Chassidus and And I'll tell you whether the tzaddik b'menosa yechaya or tzaddik b'menosa yichami. The tzaddik does all the work for you on your behalf, so he learns the chassidus, he learns everything else. B'menosa yechaya, he makes you alive, or tzaddik b'menosa yichya. That no, you have to live with the tzaddik's emunah, and you have to work on it yourself. And you don't struggle. Habakkuk, there's I think Seydar says that Habakkuk was the son of Shunamis. Habakkuk was the son of Shunamis that came back to life when the kid who passed away, and then Shunamis went to Elisha, and then Elisha was Mechayim Mesim. That was Habakkuk. So therefore, there's whole Yisai, the Emunah Tzaddikim, because his mother believed in Elisha. She didn't even bother telling her father because she knew her father would tell her, he's dead. Don't waste your time. I think Seder Hadoidus. I read this a long time ago. I don't remember exactly, but the point is the reason why he was alive is because his mother believed in the tzaddik, in the Nasi Hadoid, in Elisha, and therefore he says, you know what life is, or know what each guy's all about. You have to have a rebbe, and you have to have a munah in the rebbe, and you do that, Mr. Leben, and you make other people alive, because that's what happened to him. He said, there were 4 decrees that Moshe Rabbeinu made against the Eden, and very hard to understand why Moshe Rabbeinu, who's the ultimate Ohev Yisrael and defended Eden, came up with these ideas that he wants us, in a way, to limit the Edens, as you'll see. Came along 4 Nevi'im later on and canceled them. Moshe Amar Vayishki saw better the Eden should sit secure when? Boded and Yaakov. And they lived like a life of Yaakov. Moshe Bitla came along and he canceled. Shenemer, he says, Chadalna, me Yaakov Yaakov. Who can be like Yaakov? What are you asking? You only if they're like Yaakov, never happened. Uksi, when it says the passage, Nicha Hashem Alzois, Abel should change his mind. He withdrew. Moshe says, Ubagoy Mahem, while the Eden living in Golas, Loisagi, I don't want them to be restful. No, I want them to remember that they're in Golas, so they shouldn't get too comfortable. Well, he said, wherever they end up going, they should be restful. That the children should suffer on account of their parents. Only the one who sinned, you're responsible for your own. Moshe basically let them get lost amongst the nations of the world. Nobody should get lost. They should all come back. Nobody should get lost. But I've said, I was always very worried about this pasuk that when you live in the Golas, you should get lost among the nations of the world. Why would you get so upset? Maybe when something is lost, you go looking for it. So maybe it's like I was lost, like I was wandering about like a lost sheep, and then they came in looking for me. Elam for the crow. What he said was, what bothered me was, it says that the land of the will consume you. Maybe again you shouldn't be so upset. Why do you always look so negative? Like you don't eat the whole thing, you don't eat the peel, you don't eat, in other words, okay, some Eden might get hurt, but a lot of Eden still will be spared. Like we see in the diaspora right now, how many Eden unfortunately intermarry so late, but Baruch Hashem, many Eden are just stronger than ever. Well, this is the famous ending of the Makos. I'm sure Rabbi Kiva Mahalchim, the 4 luminaries were traveling. The Shama Kol Hamayno Shel Raimi. They heard the loud voice of the sounds of coming out from Rome, the plaza from the plaza. May of Essimil, 120 mil away, but there were so many people, the throngs of people that make so much noise. If you remember, we had in more humid, the 3 things that make noise. One of them was, the sun going from one side to the other. One of them is this, the noise of the multitude of people. These they all began to cry. But he was laughing. Why are you laughing? Why are you crying? And we had the same thing in a different story there. Same idea. He was always was positive, and they were also morbid. These guys who worship idols, they're secure. Look, they're enjoying them life. The son of ours, the Abish's house is destroyed. The age of fire, you don't want us to cry. For this very reason, I'm happy. Those who go against the Abishah gives them, has rachmanas. Imagine what kind of reward is waiting for us. Another incident, going to Shalayim, big day, and they'll rip their clothes. Now, this is interesting. Okay, is row shul. We saw this fox. Right there where the Kodesh Lashon was, is Chilul case. He ain't boichin, but Rabbi Akiva Mesachik. Amrulem Pneumatim Mesachik. Why are you laughing? Amrulem Pneumatim Boich. Why are you crying? Amrulem Mokum Shekosav Boy Bazor HaKodev Yumas. Any stranger comes, they will die. Va'achshav Shu Olim Holcha Boy. Like we said, now the foxes are wandering about. But Yivki don't want to cry. That's why I'm laughing. What's interesting is Rabbi Akiva was laughing. He's very positive, doesn't seem to know why, and yet he told Kriya. It's possible, it's possible to tear Kriya and yet be very positive. Maybe, like you can go to the oil and everything else and still be very, very positive. All the money you want. The Rebbe said Kaddish in Shvat, and yet the whole year all the Rebbe spoke about was.
Ois is Buddhist.
Yeah.
So sharing is similar to Buddhist, but at the same time,
exactly. The Chesiv says, what's the two things? Well, easily aidim them money. It says in the pasuk that they said to me these they were testified to me as Uriah HaKoyin, Zechayo ben Yivarcha. Uriah HaKoyin and Zechayo. What does Uriah have to do with Chaya? Two different things. Uriah ben Mikdash Rishon was Chaya ben Mikdash Sheni. Uriah was talking about the first base of Mikdash, and Chaya is talking about the second base of Mikdash. The Nevi'im have nothing to do with each other, and yet he brings them both together. Elotola HaKosov, the Nevuah of Zechaya, which is talking about the future. The Nevuah Shel Uriah was talking about the destruction of the first base of Mikdash. Uriah says, by Uriah says, therefore, because of Yud and Sazachar, will be destroyed, be plowed down. Okay, that's Churban Bayis Rishon. Chaya talked about the future. He said there'll be a time of Yeshu, Zekanim, Zekanis, Berchay, Shishlayim. You walk down Shishlayim today, Baruch Hashem. He said all these older people there, and Zekanis sitting there, Shalayim, and everyone has their walking stick, and so on and so forth. I'm going to read the last line. See for the 9 days. Actually, this kind of was a Shaluria. You see, I was scared. Shalek, this kind of was Chaya. I was scared that I went in Mekuyim. Now that Uriah, the Churban Bayis Rishon happened, now I know. If you want to finish up. This Traces here is unbelievable. Traces here wants to know. He said, I don't understand. There's no such pasuk. There's no such pasuk in Uriah. This pasuk is actually said by Micha. The pasuk Lochein Beglalchem was not said by Uriah, it was said by Micha. So how can we talk about Uriah? So he says here that Yirmiyah, they wanted to kill Yirmiyah. When he told them the Churban Bayis wanted to kill him. So some of the Sodom came out and said, we don't agree to kill him. Because already, he said that already Micha and Uriah said that this is going to happen. So they put Uriah, even though we don't have anything in Tanakh of Uriah, but because Uriah and Micha, Uriah said the same thing, so it sounds like Uriah therefore said the same thing. The only problem is, so just say Micha. Why is he totally it in Uriah? Let him say Micha said, because that's where the pasuk comes from, and so on and so forth. Anyway, so and Taisa concludes that this pasuk. I don't want to reject part of that. But anyway, read the rest of the Taisa when you have a chance.
The ending is interesting.
Yeah, the bottom line of Taisa says. In fact, interesting. The entire Makos, the Taisa, the last line of Taisa here is this nevuah is about La'asad Labi when Mashiach will come, and because it's talking about Tchias HaMesim. Oid Yeshus Kenus is talking about there'll be Tchias HaMesim. It's talking about after Mashiach will come will be the final Geula. The Nich Hakol, everything makes sense. The Hashem Yizakenu Lilas Mashiach. Amen. That's how you in Masechta Makos is unique. Many Taisasin, he's quoting his Rebbe, and he says, "Kain Nida LeMashiach." A Mashiach is but they put together, go through a Taisa throughout this whole Masechta at least a dozen times. Kain Nida LeMashiach, and we always say that everyone believes that Rebbe Mashiach, and that's clear. Look at the end of the first paragraph. Yeah, in many places. Kain Mashiach. I know, but here's clear. It says Kain Mashiach. Here, for example, the last Amar Rava that it's many times. We'll give you one example. Tasis Amar Rava, the second line at the top. The second Tasis on the top. You look in the last line of that Tasis. Cain needle the Mashiach.
The Moedish Yichya.
Yeah, that's what it is. Mashiach, yeah. I see a test over here. Yeah, it says right here. Shtayv is Moedish Yichya. Who Rabbeinu Peretz. Anyway, but that's what it is, Mashiach. But throughout, Mashiach. The Rebbe said that the Rambam brings down, and other Rishonim, Amen Ken Yiratzon when they're talking halachas for him. What are you saying over here that you want to be something and all that? The Rebbe said every Yid can't help yourself. As soon as you have an opportunity to say that Mashiach will come and the Beis Hamikdash should be built, you say it.